Hello, so today we're going to be replacing this radiator. This one's got a bit of a leak up at the top here, just when it's under pressure. So first of all, we're going to remove this battery connection because we're going to be messing around with some electrics just to get stuff out of the way. So first things first, disconnect the battery. Next up, we'll remove the electric fan and the fan shroud. That's 4 10mm bolts, one at the top and one down the bottom on each side. Disconnect the fan switch or the cable from the back of the fan. At this point you should be able to just pull the cable through the cable tie or whatever's holding the cable to the fan shroud. If you just pull that through, then there should be enough room for you to lift the fan and the fan shroud out and just move it out of the way. That way you don't need to cut any cable ties or anything. Next we're going to disconnect the bottom hose from the radiator to drain the coolant. By disconnecting the bottom one first, you can control more where the coolant's going to go, so into a bucket underneath. If you disconnect the top one, it's going everywhere. Next we'll remove this top hose from here, take this hose clip off. And then you'll be able to just pull the hose off. Next we'll disconnect the fan switch, so you want to take the cover off the switch first and then pull the actual plug out of the fan switch. There's two 10mm bolts holding the top of the radiator in, so undo those next. You'll then need to pull the brackets out of the radiator. This bracket looks like it's seen better days, but it's alright. The rubber hasn't perished, so it's still usable. Might see if I can get some new ones with some new rubbers from Heritage or something. Also be aware that the plate that sits on top of the rubber does fall off very easily. And yes, I did just drop it in the bucket. This one's in a similar condition to the other one. It's a bit rusty, but the rubber's still okay. It's also worth noting that the longer one sits on the right hand side of the car, whereas the shorter one is close to the battery, as you can see there, the left hand side of the car, curbside if you're in the UK. Make sure when you put it back together that the metal washer sits on top of the rubber and not in the bucket. There's some cowling or like plastic deflectors that sit on the front of the radiator, just down inside there, behind the grille. So we need to take the grille off to get to those, to undo them from the back of the radiator so we can get the radiator out. So you need to undo 2 screws at the top of the grille, and then you can gently pry it off. So to remove the grille, to pull it out of the way, you've got these 2 plugs here that connect the sort of central headlights. So we need to undo those plugs. To do that, you squeeze the sides of the metal clips on the side of the plug and just pull the plug. That's it, that's disconnected. So we've got 1 more of those to do on the other side.
So 2 of those. And
now with the grill out the way, these 2 bits of plastic here, there's one on this side and one on the other side, we've got to disconnect those from the front of the radiator. And to do that, there are 4 bolts. There's one up the top there and one in there down the bottom, and then same on the other side, one there and the other one, you can't really see it from this angle or from this angle, down the bottom.
okay. Okay, so there's a little pipe, this pipe here, that comes from the header tank. That just plugs into the top of the radiator. So it's on there with a cable tie on this car. You can see that. I think it should just pull off. Let's see, maybe I need to cut that off. Okay. Okay, so cut this cable tie. Cut this cable tie off. There we go. And then that pipe will just nice and easily and gently pull off without breaking anything. Oh, there we go. Lid.
So now everything's disconnected from the radiator. You should be able to just lever it towards the back of the car a bit at the top, and then it should just pull straight upwards and out. Don't forget there's still loads of fluid in it, so if you don't want it going everywhere, tilt the radiator. I didn't manage to get hold of a fan switch in time, so I'm going to reuse this one, which is definitely not going to come back and bite me. If you can get hold of one, it's definitely worth doing so. I think they're only about 12 quid or something from Heritage, so it's not worth really reusing it if you can get hold of one. And this one doesn't look in great condition. It's okay, it still works, but they do break, so definitely worth replacing while you've got this out. Also worth noting that this is the 2-pin radiator switch rather than the 3-pin. So before we do anything else, we're going to just offer up the new radiator over the top of the old one, just to make sure everything lines up, screw holes, the switch hole, make sure the radiator's the same size and so on, because there are loads of options out there and you don't want to start putting it in and something doesn't fit or doesn't line up properly. So now we're going to put the fan switch in into the radiator. So just put a piece of cardboard or something underneath the radiator just to protect the radiator, and then we'll put the fan switch in. Don't need to go too mad with tightening this up. There is a like a crush washer to help make a seal, so you don't need any sealant or anything. So I'll just tweak that up there. Then there are these two little rubber washers that sit underneath the pins on either side of the radiator. So one there and one the other side. Make sure you put those on. And the pins on the bottom of the radiator drop into two holes on the sort of the cross beam. There are two holes closest to the radiator, so you can see down the bottom just there. There are two holes there, and there are two holes on the other side as well, two holes down there. So you want to use one hole on each side that's closest to the battery. It's the easiest way I can think to describe it. Just get the radiator down into place, make sure there's nothing caught underneath it, or make sure all the pipes and things are out of the way. And then once it's in place, you put the return pipe on, back on the side here. Then get the biggest cable tie you've got available. No, you only need a small cable tie here. This is the only one I had to hand. So just get that cable tie on, tighten that up nice and tight. Cut the excess off. So lining up the radiator cowling on this side and this side over here, you can see I'm actually going to move to the inside holes there, and then it's 4 of these bolts, sort of self-tapper bolts that are going to screw into the radiator. So let's get those in. Okay, these are pretty awkward, so So putting the grill on, obviously that way up, putting the grill on, we're going to connect the lights back up, the centre lights back up. Going to connect these centre lights back up, then we're going to get the grill in place and get the two screws on the top. When you're putting this on, it's worth noting that on the bottom of the grill, you've got these clips, and they sit on here on this metal lip. So the metal lip will go in between those bits there. One goes there, one goes there, one goes there, and one on the end there. And they need to be in place, otherwise the grill will flap around all over the place. So plugging the lights back in, make sure that the two pins at the top plug into the two holes at the top of the socket, obviously, and you'll need to squeeze the sides. So you need to squeeze these metal bits in on either side to get that in, and then the same on the other side. squeezing the sides in, push the plug in. There we go, that's all the way. Making sure these bottom bits go over the lip, basically. And then also you're going to want these top pieces to go in these holes here. That, and there's two screws, one here, one here. Now we're going to refit the radiator brackets, so make sure you've got the these little metal washers on the top before you start fitting the brackets, and on both of them. And the long one goes on the airbox side, while the short one goes on the battery side. And you want to put them in the frontmost holes on the radiator. And make sure you push them down. They'll almost click into place when you push them down. We'll then use these two long 10mm bolts to secure the brackets. We'll refit the bottom radiator hose now, as it's much easier to do that before the radiator fan is in place. And don't forget to do up the bottom hose clip. We will, however, leave the top hose off for the time being, as it helps to avoid airlocks when you're filling up the radiator. Annoyingly, these bolts aren't self-tappers, and there's no thread, there's no like pre-made thread in the radiator, so the bolts just don't screw into the radiator. So what I'm having to do is use this this tapper or tap to add some thread basically to the holes in the radiator, so you can fit the fan and cowling. This would be much easier to do this, add these threads while the radiators or before the radiators fitted to the car, but it's in now and I'm not taking it back out, so I'm just going to do it in situ. It's not too difficult. You only really need to put a few turns on it, and then the bolt will do the rest. So next we're going to fit the radiator fan. I found that the plug on the fan itself on the motor sits at the top when it's fit round the right way, but it's the cowling that's more important here. The sort of the longer section of the cowling fits on the airbox side, where the shorter side of the cowling fits on the battery side. Don't forget to fit the plug to the back of the fan. It's pretty easy, it only goes on one way up. And then also make sure you fit the plug to the fan switch. Again, this can only go in one way up. I found it easier to try and pull back the rubber on the plug before you put the plug in, and then refit the rubber after that. And make sure you refit that rubber cover over the plug. So now we're going to fill the system up with coolant. We're going to leave this top hose off for the time being so we can see the coolant coming out. Basically, it can help prevent airlocks, so the air's got somewhere to escape basically while we're filling it up. And then once the coolant's made its way around the system, we can see it at the hose. We'll refit the hose. And we're using this concentrated antifreeze from Euro Car Parts, and I'll put a link in the description for that. I went for concentrated this time because I wasn't quite sure how much I'd need. Also with concentrated, you can take it to the circuit and you need to carry less, and you still have enough in like a 5-litre can to refill the system maybe twice. So let's fill it up. And this is where I wish I'd fitted a new radiator fan switch. Yes, that is a leak at the bottom. It's a bit awkward to get to where it is without taking some stuff off, at least the fan. So you're much better off doing this before the radiator's fitted. So all I've done here is just tightened up that the fan switch a bit, and this will just crush the washer down a little bit more to form a better seal. Basically, there's a copper washer that sits around the fan switch, and when you fit the fan switch, the copper washer is designed to crush to form a seal between the radiator and the fan switch. And if you reuse an older one, you might have to tighten it up a bit more. You're better off getting a new fan switch, or at least a new washer. Okay, so I can now see that the coolant is coming out of the hose up here, so that suggests that the coolant has made it all the way around the system. So we can now refit the hose and refit the hose clip, and then continue filling it up. So that's about all the coolant for now. I'm using a mixture of about 2 parts water to 1 part coolant. So what we're going to do now is get the engine started and get the system up to temperature, and we may need to top up if there's still any air in the system. So we should see coolant coming through this pipe into the header tank, and that should be us done. So we've got water coming around, circulating around the system, which is good. Means there's likely no airlocks. Just waiting for it to warm up a bit now, get up to temperature, make sure the fan cuts in, make sure there's no leaks when it's hot. So that's pretty much us done now. Just waiting for the car to get up to temperature, just to make sure there's no leaks when it's hot. Then we'll put the radiator cap back on and again check for leaks, and then that's pretty much it. If you found this video useful at all, if you could like, subscribe, put the bell on, all that good stuff, it really does help us out. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video.